Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have the news that former Democratic U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown is officially going to be running for Senate in the 2026 midterm elections. So an article that I'm reading first from Politico, it mentions that Sherrod Brown has decided to run for the Senate race in Ohio in 2026, according to people that are familiar with his thinking, making a play for his old job just a few months after he was beaten by Republican Bernie Moreno last November. The Democrat will face off against Republican Senator Jon Husted, who Ohio Governor Mike DeWine appointed to the Senate to fill the seat after J.D. Vance left to become the Vice President of the United States. Brown was a top recruit for Senate Democratic leaders in their uphill battle to reclaim the majority in the upper chamber in 2026. He was first elected to the U.S. Senate in 2006 and survived two hard-fought re-election campaigns, even as Ohio's status as a Republican state only crystallized. In 2018, he bested Republican Jim Renassi by roughly 7 points, and even though President Trump won the state 2 years prior. But in 2024, Republican Bernie Moreno defeated Sherrod Brown by more than 200,000 votes, which is it came out to a little bit under 4% in terms of the margin of victory. Still, Brown ran nearly 8 points ahead of Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket as Trump claimed victory in the state of Ohio by 11 points. Saying, quote, "I don't see November 5th as a failure," he told Politico in an interview days after his election loss. "I see it as sort of a new start of continuing my work focusing on workers." Brown is the only major Democrat to run for the seat and will likely clear the primary field. The Cleveland Plain Dealer first reported Brown's plans, and two people familiar with Brown's thinking spoke in the condition of anonymity to discuss his not yet public decision. Democrats need to net 4 seats to reclaim the Senate in 2026, and Brown's decision could yet put Ohio in play. But the math will still be difficult. Only 2 of the 22 Republican seats up for grabs in the midterm elections come from states Trump lost or won by less than 10 points in 2024. The winner in 2026 will only claim the right to finish Vance's original term, which would then need to be running again in 2028 to win a full 6-year stint. Now, this is very interesting that Sherrod Brown is officially running, because Sherrod Brown has a long record in the state of Ohio at being a Democrat that outperforms national Democrats, like at the presidential level. So we saw that in 2024, and we pull up the election results here, as the article mentioned, Trump won by 11 points. Sherrod Brown only lost his Senate race by 3.6% against Bernie Moreno. So this is certainly very, very big for the Democrats in terms of getting a stronger candidate. We can look back in 2020 when Donald Trump won the state of Ohio by 8 points. And then 2 years before that, in 2018, Sherrod Brown won re-election by 6.8%. Now, his last Senate race before that was in 2012. He won by 6 points against Republican Josh Mandel, where President Obama at the time only won Ohio by 3 points against Mitt Romney. So Sherrod Brown has been an overperformer at the Senate level in the state of Ohio. And Democrats are going to be very excited by this, that they have a strong candidate in Sherrod Brown to run against Jon Husted for 2026. Now, it should be worth noting, though, that Sherrod Brown did lose his Senate seat in 2024, and he was the incumbent U.S. Senator. So that is going to be a knock on him running. Unless something completely changes, we know Jon Husted is going to be the Republican Senator and Senate candidate for this race. He has the endorsement of President Trump. Now we know Sherrod Brown is going to be running. He will be the Democrat candidate without any doubt. Now, the ratings have already changed on this race, from Inside Election, Sabato's Crystal Ball, and Race to the White House, all changing their ratings within the last week or so following the news of Husted versus Brown. And they have shifted the rankings to Lean Republican, and Tilt Republican. Cook Political Report has not changed their ratings yet, but I assume they'll be changing them in the next few days, and I expect they'll probably be in the Lean Republican margin as well. And it makes sense, because 2 most recent polls, both from Bowling Green State University, between Husted and Brown, the most recent poll has it a 3-point race between Husted versus Brown. And this race is very fascinating, because on the 2026 Senate map, Ohio plays a very important role in this election. Right now, based on the current Senate map, I have Republicans favored in 51 Senate seats, Democrats 45, and then leaving out the state of Ohio, including giving the Democrats New Hampshire and Republicans Maine with Susan Collins. The Democrats are trying to get as many Democratic wins on the Senate map as possible, in a map that's very Republican friendly and does not really give the Democrats a great chance at trying to win the Senate majority. But Ohio does give the Democrats a potential chance of that if they can win the state. Let's say, hypothetically, the Democrats win the 3 Senate toss-up seats right now in Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia. That would get Democrats up to 48. Now let's say Sherrod Brown is able to win in an upset election against Jon Husted. That would get Democrats up to 49. Republicans would still hold a majority in the U.S. Senate, 51 to 49. Now, if the Democrats are able to defeat Susan Collins in Maine and Sherrod Brown wins Ohio, this would get the Senate to a 50-50 Senate map. Now, in this scenario, Republicans would still hold a majority in the U.S. Senate due to the fact that Vice President breaks the tie and Vice President J.D. Vance is a Republican. But the Democrats getting to 50 Senate seats on this 2026 Senate map would be an absolutely crucial thing to happen for the Democrats in this election. So Sherrod Brown entering this race is certainly very good news for the Democrats and gives them a one-time very strong candidate to run in this race that could make the state of Ohio very competitive and may even potentially give the Democrats a chance of winning. But we need to talk about the state of Ohio, though, and why I think Sherrod Brown, despite running in what will be a very close election, I do still think he is slightly favored to lose at this current point in time. And that is the state of Ohio overall. Because the state of Ohio has been one of the most Republican trending states in the United States for years now. From 2012, which is the last time a Democrat, Barack Obama, won it at the presidential level, Ohio has shifted about 14.2% towards Donald Trump just in 12 years. So Ohio is one of the most Republican trending states in the nation at the presidential level. We can also compare this to 2024, where Bernie Moreno, the Republican, won against Sherrod Brown. From 2018 to 2024, Ohio, Bernie Moreno moved 10.5% towards the Republican side. If you want to go back to 2012 in the Josh Mandel race, Ohio moved 9.6% towards the Republicans in that election based off of Brown losing. Ohio has been moving a lot to the Republican side, and that's going to be tough. The one problem Sherrod Brown does not have in this race right now is that he is not technically the incumbent. This is Republican Senator Jon Husted. He is the incumbent in this race. Sherrod Brown just lost the Senate race where he was the incumbent against a Republican challenger who, based on approval ratings going into this race, Bernie Moreno was a lot more unpopular than Jon Husted is going to be. Now, just to give you an idea of how this election ultimately unfolded, it ended up being about a 3.5 point race, margin of victory or so. The predictions for this race, a bunch of ratings had this as a toss-up. Sabato's Crystal Ball had it as leading Republican. Elections Daily and CNN Analysis had it slightly tilting for the Democrat, for Sherrod Brown. Now, in the polling actually was very tight. And this is where things got very interesting, because 538 only had Moreno leading by 0.7%. Real Clear Politics had Bernie Moreno up by 1.7. 270 to Win had Sherrod Brown leading by 0.3. And The Hill and Decision Desk HQ had Moreno up 2.1. So it was a very narrow lead for Moreno in what was otherwise a likely Republican state, but it was Sherrod Brown that was running. But you look at the early polls in this race, and Sherrod Brown started out with the lead over Bernie Moreno once Moreno won the primary, or even back in the summer before he won the primary. But then you see here these polls, Sherrod Brown continued to lead, and really continued to lead throughout most of August and July, and then getting into early September. That's when you see things start to change a little bit. But Sherrod Brown still held a very narrow lead in this race. But you look at the percentages in which Sherrod Brown was leading in a lot of these polls, were around 46 to 47%. And in the state of Ohio, where Bernie Moreno just got 50% of the vote, 46-47% is not enough for the Democrat to win in this race, when recent election history suggests Republicans are going to be getting at least 49 to 50%, depending on the election, unless something is really going wrong. And ultimately, the final polls showed Sherrod Brown getting around 46 to 47, 48% in the polling. That really wasn't different from when he was leading against Bernie Moreno early on. But Bernie Moreno was only polling in the low 40s, and was why Sherrod Brown was leading in these polls. And it also should be worth noting that Atlas Intel, which ended up being one of the most successful pollsters for the 2024 election, correctly predicted a 3-point margin between Moreno and Brown in this race. Emerson also did this as well, 48-45, a 3-point margin, ending 52-48 in the head-to-head, a 4-point margin. So the polling in the last few days of this race actually was pretty spot on, and that could be something to watch for in 2026, what the final few days of polling suggests for this Senate race. But Ohio's going to be interesting to watch, because I do think this is a situation where the Democrats are going to be competitive in the state of Ohio, and the Democrats could certainly win it. But the election history of the state of Ohio suggests this should be a Republican win for Jon Husted. Now, that being said, Sherrod Brown has a very impressive political record in the state of Ohio, and that alone would not be enough for me to officially rule out Sherrod Brown winning this Senate race, because of how long he's been in office and how most of his impressive victories happen. Now, 2024, he did lose to Bernie Moreno, but as the article mentioned, he did overperform President Trump by 8 points. Now, the point that's going to be brought up is the midterm election environment, where 2026 is expected to be a much more friendly year than 2024 was. And Bernie Moreno only lost by 3.6. Now, that opens the door for Sherrod Brown to potentially win after such a narrow election in 2024. At the same time, Jon Husted is going to be a more popular Republican that's probably more well-known than Bernie Moreno was. So that could ultimately lead to a very close race that could be gone either way, but I think the Republicans do nearly start out as the favorite to win this race against Sherrod Brown. I do have it in the lean column, though, at under 5 points, right now around a 4.5-point margin of victory. I think Husted will still be in a competitive race versus Brown, and he will win because he's more popular than Moreno, but I do think it'll be a very close race due to the fact that Sherrod Brown is a very strong candidate. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have some news out of the state of Alabama where Republican Representative Barry Moore has officially announced he is running for the 2026 Senate race. So I'm reading the article by thehill.com written by Emily Brooks, and this article came out on August 12th, 2025. And the news is that Representative Barry Moore officially launched the campaign Tuesday for the Alabama Senate seat that is currently open due to Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville not running for re-election, instead running for governor of the state of Alabama. Now, in an announcement video, Moore touted being the first elected official in the country to endorse Donald Trump for president in 2015. He said, quote, "I didn't wait to see which way the wind was blowing," the lawmaker said. "I stood with him from the very beginning, and I've stood with him every step of the way in Congress." Now, as I mentioned, Tuberville, the former Auburn University football coach who joined the Senate in 2021, is not running for re-election and is going to run for governor of Alabama, which he's widely expected to win that race. Moore joins a 2026 Republican Senate primary field that includes the Alabama Attorney General, Steve Marshall. His departure from the seat also opens up the possibility of former Republican Representative Jerry Carl of Alabama mounting a bid to return to Congress. Due to redistricting, Moore and Carl ran against each other for the congressional seat last year. Carl teased on the social media platform X that he would make a major announcement on August 18th. So by the time this video comes out, you may be seeing that Carl's already announced, and I'll be having a future video covering that if he does jump in. His campaign isn't about climbing some ladder or pleasing the establishment, Moore said in his video announcement. "I'm not a rhino, I'm sure not one of those MAGA pretenders suddenly coming to be a conservative. I've never been nothing but a Republican, and I stand up for our values in Congress every day." The GOP lawmaker also played up his membership in the House Freedom Caucus, the conservative fighters that don't back down. Now, first, for the state of Alabama. Alabama has several congressional seats. Barry Moore represents this district right here, Alabama's 1st district, which if the map doesn't get redrawn again in 2026, which I don't think it will, but with all the redistricting going on right now, I mean, I have to preface that by saying any state can be redrawn apparently, so who knows what's going to happen, but this 1st district of Barry Moore was about a 57-point win for the Republican in 2024. The Cook Political Voting Index has this race listed, or this district, as Republican plus 27. So this is a safe Republican district without any doubt. There's no danger of it falling to the Democrats if Moore is not the Republican candidate, and as the other candidate, Carl, could run, as I mentioned. Now, the Senate race, which again, Tommy Tuberville is not running, is an open race. And right now, there are 4 Republicans currently running. Sherrod Brown, a tactical training business owner and nominee for Jefferson County Sheriff in 2022. Steve Marshall, the Attorney General of Alabama. And Barry Moore, U.S. Representative of Alabama's 1st District, with Jeremy Spratling, a businessman. Right now, Steve Marshall and Barry Moore are the 2 most notable Republicans in this race. Now, 3 other Republicans have also expressed interest in running, including 2 very well-known. Mo Brooks, the former U.S. Representative from Alabama's 5th District from 2011 to 2023, who was also a candidate for Senate in 2017 and in 2022, has expressed interest in running. Now, Ken Davis, the former commissioner of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs, is also expressing interest in running. Also, Morgan Murphy, a former national security advisor to Senator Tommy Tuberville. So this is very interesting. It also is worth noting there are a lot of other Republicans that are listed as potential candidates, though they have not given any indication yet at how this will go. This could be a very interesting primary, because right now the only poll we have to go off of comes from McLaughlin and Associates from the middle of July, which showed Steve Marshall at 35%, Barry Moore at 12%, Sherrod Hudson 9%, but still 44% of voters undecided. So based on this poll, Steve Marshall, the Attorney General, starts out with a lead in this Republican primary, but there is enough undecided votes for something to definitely change in this race. Another important thing to mention is that no candidate has currently made, President Trump has not made an endorsement of any of the candidates in this race. Sherrod Hudson has the endorsement of Riley Gaines. Barry Moore has the endorsement of John Merrill, the Secretary of State of Alabama from 2015 to 2023, and that's going to be it for the candidates that are currently in the race. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out, and the big one that everyone's waiting for, of course, is what does President Trump decide to do? Does Trump make an endorsement in this race? Will it be for Barry Moore or Steve Marshall, or maybe Mo Brooks or Ken Davis? Does President Trump stay out of the race? We'll have to wait and see how that all goes. But I think his endorsement would likely make the tipping point in this race. This is going to be a very competitive race right now, but Steve Marshall seems to be leading on the Republican side of things. On the Democratic side, there actually are 3 Democrats currently running, in Dacare Lariat, a pet care business owner, Kyle Sweetser, a construction company owner, and a 2024 DNC speaker, Mark Wheeler II, who is a chemist. Another Democrat has filed paperwork to run, Val Glasgow. The Democrat that would probably be the most exciting to watch for this race would be Doug Jones, the former U.S. Senator, who served from 2018 to 2021. He won a very close special election against the Republican Roy Moore. In that special election, Roy Moore was a very scandal-plagued, flawed candidate, and Doug Jones was nearly able to defeat him. And then Tommy Tuberville ran against Doug Jones in the 2020 Senate map and was able to defeat him in a closer election than typical happens at the Senate level in Alabama. Now, these Democrats really don't have much money raised, and it makes a lot of sense seeing as Alabama is listed as solid for the Republicans across all major political prediction websites. Inside Elections, Cook Political Report, Sabler's Crystal Ball, and Race to the White House, all having the race as solid Republican, and it makes a lot of sense. Not just the congressional levels at Republican, but at the presidential level. Alabama just voted for Donald Trump in 2024 by 30.5%. In 2020, it voted for Trump by 25.5%. In 2016, voted for Trump by 27.7%. And even in 2012, voted for Romney by 22.2%. Just from 2020 to 2024, Alabama got 5 points even redder. From 2016 to 2024, it's moved about 2.7% more Republican. From 2012 to 2024, it's moved 8.3% more Republican. So Alabama is continuing to be a very reliable red state at the presidential level. The Senate level, not really anything different. In 2022, Republican Katie Britt won her Senate race by 35.7%. Now, in 2020, the Senate race for Tommy Tuberville versus Doug Jones was actually a little bit more competitive than other races in Alabama, due to the fact that Doug Jones was the incumbent Democratic senator at this time. Now, Tuberville did win without any much of a problem, winning by 20.4% against Doug Jones, but still, this safe Republican ranking is probably the floor for a margin of victory result for the Democrats in the state of Alabama. Now, the Senate race before that, in 2016, the Republican Shelby won by 28 points. 2014, the Republican Jeff Sessions before that won by 2014, and that's why this race was open after Sessions went to serve in Trump's administration in the first term. So that's Alabama at the Senate level. The governor level, again, also very similar. Safe Republican win in 2022. 2018, safe Republican win for Kay Ivey as well. Alabama is going to be a safe Republican state. So much so on the Senate map right now. 3 Senate seats I have are tossed up: Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia. Alabama certainly not one of them. This will be a safe Republican seat. It really just depends on which Republican will end up winning the primary. That is going to shake things up for this race, depending on who wins. But whichever Republican advances to the general, they should win the general election without really any problem against any of the Democrats. So this is some interesting news out of Alabama. I want to know what you think. Leave a comment below what you think about this race. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today we have some news out of Washington State about the 2026 U.S. House elections, where Republican State Senator John Braun is seeking Washington's 3rd congressional seat. Now, Brown offers more political experience than recent Republican candidate Joe Kent in the race for Washington's 3rd District. This article is by opb.org, I believe it's out of Oregon, this newspaper actually. The Washington State Senator Jon Braun announced his plans Tuesday to take on U.S. Representative Marie Gluesenkamp Perez in what's expected to be a highly contested 2026 midterm election. Braun, a Republican from Centralia, is a Navy veteran and business owner who brings legislative experience to the race. Having served in Washington State Senate since 2013, he was elected as the Republican Senate leader in 2020. In his announcement, Braun said he would focus on securing U.S. borders and maintaining national defense if elected to Congress. I know how to fight bad policy and how to craft good policy that makes a difference for people here in Southwest Washington, Braun said in a statement. I look forward to working with President Trump on a positive agenda that gets America back on the right track. Gluesenkamp Perez, the Democrat from Skamania, was first elected to Washington's 3rd Congressional District seat in 2022. She defeated Republican Joe Kent, a career soldier who aligned with President Trump's wing of the Republican Party and helped unseat longtime District Representative Jamie Herrera Butler, a Republican who voted to impeach Donald Trump during his first term. Kent lost a rematch with Gluesenkamp Perez in 2024, but was elevated by President Trump to lead the National Counterterrorism Center in his administration this year. Gluesenkamp Perez's win over Kent in 2024 election that favored Trump for a second term undercut Kent's push to inject national political issues like immigration and foreign aid in Ukraine into the local race. Braun's bid for 2026 could offer voters someone with more experience handling local political issues in Southwest Washington. His legislative accomplishments in the 2025 session included local issues like school transportation funding and stumping for Republican-favored budgets that limited tax increases, but Braun has also begun to weigh into national politics as he tries to court Trump voters, most recently saying critiques of the president's reconciliation bill were false and that it would not gut health care or food access in Washington. I just don't think we're getting the type of representation from the incumbent that we deserve, Braun told the Chronicle during a July meeting with the Centralia-based paper's editorial board. Not just here in our local community, but broadly around the 3rd District, it's a Republican district, he said, a moderate Republican district, but it's a Republican district. And that's not what we're getting from Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, he said. Gluesenkamp Perez, whose family owns an auto shop in Portland, wasted little time pushing back on Braun, calling him, quote, a career politician, in a statement Tuesday. It's no surprise that the D.C. swamp has recruited him to run for Congress, the Democrat wrote. They know they can count on him to maintain business as usual, which is saddling future generations with enormous debt and giving even more handouts to special interests. The race in the midterm election is likely going to be highly competitive after federal policies by the Trump administration have angered some voters. Then it gets into some of the other specifics on the race, which I'll be covering in just one moment. Now, this district is very interesting, the Washington 3rd District. According to the Cook Political Voting Index, this Washington 3rd District right here is listed at Republican +2 on the Cook Political Voting Index. Now, it should be worth noting that Republican +2 is a lean Republican ranking, but the 2023 Cook PVI had this district listed at Republican +5. So it has moved about 3 points in the Democratic direction from 2023 to 2025. Still, in this race, a generic Republican versus generic Democrat suggests that a Republican should probably win. But Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, the Democrat, currently represents this Republican-leaning race. And this is going to be a very important race to watch for going into 2026. Now, pulling up here the House elections for the 3rd District, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, who's I would consider more of a moderate Democrat, is running again in 2026. She's considered, however, vulnerable to potentially primary challenge from the left due to her support of the SAVE Act, which was a United States law that would amend the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to require documentary proof of United States citizenship, a bill that a lot of Democrats, or majority of Democrats, are very much against. She actually supported that. Now, another vote she did was to censure fellow Democrat Al Green and other votes that broke traditional party lines. In May 2025, a Democrat, Brent Heinrich, a candidate for this district in 2022, announced his intention to run for those reasons. Now, just to be clear so far, for this race so far, the way it's done, we do have a Republican, Anthony Barron, running an oyster farm owner, but John Braun, the Republican minority leader of the Washington Senate, is the most notable Republican currently in this race. Brent Heinrich, the Democrat, is also running. Marie Gluesenkamp Perez is not officially said she's 100% running, but she has filed paperwork to run for this race, and until expected or proven otherwise, she will be running in this election. Other Republicans or independents that could run: Eric Vaughn, independent, has filed paperwork to run. John Rocco, Republican, has formed an exploratory committee. Jim Walsh, a state representative and chair of the Washington Republican Party from 2023 to president, is also listed as a potential candidate. Now, John Braun already has the endorsement of U.S. Representative Michael Baumgartner of the 5th District from Washington and former State Senator Linda Wilson, while Marie Gluesenkamp Perez has the endorsement of Emily's List, a left-leaning political action committee that aims to help Democratic female candidates in favor of abortion rights get elected to office. This is going to be a very fascinating race to watch. Cook Political Report has it listed as a toss-up. Inside Elections has it as tilt Democrat. And when you look at the last few elections in this district, they have been incredibly close. Even at the state level, where in 2024 in the presidential race, Kamala Harris defeated Donald Trump by 18.2%, at the House level, this district is a lot more competitive. It voted for Marie Gluesenkamp Perez by 3.9% against the Republican Joe Kent in this race. And I'll be going more in the district and looking at the key counties in it in just one moment. In 2022, this race very narrowly voted for Marie Gluesenkamp Perez against Joe Kent by 0.82%. So a very, very close race in 2022. Now in 2020, obviously the district got redrawn a good bit from 2020 to 2022, but the Republican Butler won it by 13 points. The district becomes more competitive, and then it narrowly flips to the Democrat. Now, in the district itself in 2024, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez got 51.9% of the total vote across the district. Republican Joe Kent got 48.1% of the vote. Marie Gluesenkamp Perez got roughly 215,177 votes to Joe Kent's 199,054 votes. Roughly around 16,000 votes separating Gluesenkamp Perez and Joe Kent in this district. So, a very close race, under a 4-point race, of the 414,000 votes cast. Now, by population in this district, the largest county by far in terms of population is Clark County, where it had about 269,768 votes of the 414,231. Now, obviously, Clark County, this is where the city of Vancouver, Washington is. Being over 50% of the district, the margins of votes in this area are very big, and the percentages in which Gluesenkamp Perez won by are certainly very significant. She won 56 to 44%, getting 152,000 votes to 117,000 votes. Certainly a very large margin here that, just doing quick math in my head here, would be a little bit more than about 35,000 votes or so out of this district. So certainly very big win for her here, and this is an important county to watch for going into 2026. Now, the other counties in the state are not as large population-wise, but a lot of them are more Republican-friendly, and thus the margin of victories for the Republicans are going to be big here. For instance, we can look at Lewis County. Only 44,000 total votes, but 61-39 win, roughly 10,000 vote net gain out of Lewis. Thurston County, again, a lot smaller, but 61-39, about 4,000 votes or so out of this county margin for the Republicans. Coates County, the second largest county in this district, 55-45, pretty competitive, roughly about 6,000 votes gained for Joe Kent there. Skamania County, very small, 51-49, very narrow win, only about a 200 vote win or so for Joe Kent over Gluesenkamp Perez there. Then we have Waukegan County, that I definitely butchered that pronunciation. It was about a 6-point win, only about 100 votes separating there. And then you also have Pacific County, which was a very competitive county that voted 54-46 for Gluesenkamp Perez over Joe Kent, and was roughly about 1,000 votes added to Gluesenkamp Perez's number. So this district is very interesting in that this county and Clark County, being over 50% of the district in terms of population, gives the Democrat a very good chance of winning if the Democrat can get very strong turnout numbers, which Gluesenkamp Perez did, winning by 13 points. Now let's just compare this map and all the margins very briefly to what 2022 looked like, where Gluesenkamp Perez only won 50.4% to Kent's 49.6%, so a lot closer of a race. Also 318,000 votes this time instead of the 400,000. Now, we see here the margins that Gluesenkamp Perez had in these areas were lower than they were in 2024. She pretty much did better almost everywhere in 2024 than she did in 2022. You see Clark County, it was an 11-point victory for Gluesenkamp Perez in this one, 55-45, and then it doesn't account for the decimals or so. Roughly about 22,000 votes or so out of Clark County. And Pacific, only a 2-point victory in this one, only another 300 votes for Gluesenkamp Perez there. Joe Kent had stronger numbers in Thurston, 62-38, Lewis, 65-35, Waukesha, 56-44, Cowlitz, 56-44, Skamania, 53-47. So for this district in 2026, I'm looking at these results from 2022 and the results from 2024 and saying, does Marie Gluesenkamp Perez match the margins that she got in 2024, or are they more similar to 2022? Because if it's 2024, it's going to be a very close race, but Gluesenkamp Perez is probably going to win by a lean Democratic margin. If it's closer to 2022, we may have a very close competitive race on our hands that she may very well still end up winning, but it could be a lot closer. And it could also be worth noting that given the voter turnout of 2026, maybe even tighter than that. But we could also see, based on the 2022 result, is the Republican expanding on Joe Kent's numbers? And if they are, by how much? And is it enough to flip the seat? So this is a very close race that I'm watching for 2026. It should also be worth noting that right now, the current House map has the Republicans favored in 208 seats, Democrats 206 on 270towin.com, and the 3rd district is currently listed as a toss-up at this current point in time. Now, obviously, there's a lot of redistricting going on in the House right now that is certainly adding a very interesting situation to the 2026 House elections, but Washington's 3rd district is going to play a very important role in determining which party will hold the majority in the U.S. House come 2026. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts on this video, and I hope to see you in a future video.